Of record, I'm George Toth, here on Talk of the Suburbs, 1440 AM, WNPV1440.com. And Joe Gale, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's just my pleasure to have you here. Joe, you've been on the county commissioner now for a number of years, and been watching what you've been doing, and I guess you were the first, in a sense, the ripple in the force, which then became a landslide throughout the country. And here we are now, back to Montgomery County politics, and Joe Gale standing on the how would I say it, the parapets, the ramparts, and saying no more, no further. You wrote a very nice article in the, I guess, the Montgomery County papers. How many papers did that get into, by the way?
Well, it first appeared in the Times-Herald. I wrote an op-ed regarding the recent tax bill letter that the county sent out to all the property owners. Okay. So it was in the Times-Herald, and then all the local papers from Town and Country to the Reporter to the Colonial, the Ambler Gazette.
Springfield Sun.
One
Springfield Sun. Springfield Sun. It
Yeah.
was in the Springfield Sun.
Correct.
Yep.
And one newspaper refused to.
And that was which one?
Philadelphia Inquirer.
Can you believe that?
I actually got a response where they would refuse to submit it, which shocked me because this is something that affects every property owner in Montgomery County, which is massive.
Yeah, and of course not to be derogatory towards the papers that you mentioned, but their circulation is de minimis. Probably the Philadelphia Inquirer and its online edition would have given you a little bit more exposure. But that's not surprising. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I would have just liked to let more people know about this issue. And I think it's important for people that hold public office to take it upon themselves to write op-eds and educate residents that they represent on important issues, and this is definitely one of them.
Joe, I did a quick survey. Roughly, there's 800,000 souls in Montgomery County. There's about 13 million souls in the state. So that gives us about 6.15% of the population of the state. Not a small amount. I'm sure there's larger counties with more. But I think that it's still, you've got a major responsibility. You're carrying a lot of weight. And again, you are the only Republican on the board against two Democrats. And I would say fairly hard-leaning Democrats. What's been your experience in the last few years being the sole voice of reason?
Yeah, I'm in a unique situation. As you mentioned, I represent the third largest county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So we have actually roughly 823,000 residents in Montgomery County. And next to the county of Philadelphia and the county of Allegheny, which has the city of Pittsburgh, number 3 in population is Montgomery County. And it's actually larger than 4 states throughout the country in population. So it's a very large, important county to the state of Pennsylvania. And I am the one Republican. I'm considered the minority commissioner on the board. It's a 3-member board. I serve with 2 Democrats. I'm the sole Republican. And actually, from a political standpoint, next to the only statewide Republican office holder, which is Senator Pat Toomey, our U.S. Senator, I have a larger Republican constituency than any other elected official in the state. So I also have a big microphone for the conservatives out there that sometimes don't feel like they're represented. I've been a strong conservative voice for those individuals. And I'm also a very outspoken commissioner. I've gained a lot of support and attention, not only in Montgomery County, but a lot of the surrounding counties. Because really in southeast Pennsylvania, when I say southeast Pennsylvania, I'm describing the 5-county area. So Chester County, Bucks County, Delaware County, Philadelphia County, Montgomery County. In a lot of minds, and it's an honor to hold this title, but I'm probably the most leading conservative in southeast Pennsylvania. So I have a lot of responsibilities. I have to govern as the commissioner, and I also have that voice. So it's really an honor to serve in the county that I grew up in. I'm also the youngest commissioner in the history of Montgomery County.
Mm-hmm.
My birthday was just this past Friday on March 24th. I turned 28 years old.
Good on you.
I took office last January. So I've been in for about 14 months, a little over 14 months in my role as commissioner.
Well, before we dive down into sort of the nitty gritty, I want to just ask a kind of maybe a tough question. Where do you see yourself going in politics? Do you see yourself staying at this level as long as you can? Are you going to go to the state? Are you going to go to the House of Representatives? What's up for Joe Gale?
Well, George, I get asked that often.
I'm sure.
Because with the size of the county, in the past, Montgomery County Commissioner has been used as a springboard for statewide office.
Mm-hmm.
Because out of all the 67 counties in the state, Montgomery County, in my opinion and opinion of many experts in political scenes, agree that Montgomery County plays the biggest role in statewide office. And the county has gone Democrat in registration. We have a lot of people that leave the city of Philadelphia and they move to the surrounding suburbs, which is Montgomery County.
Yep. They're moving into my township, as a matter of fact.
Yep, all over. There's 62 municipalities, and they're all having an increase in Democrat voter registration. However, if there's a Republican that can hold his own in a Democrat county that has support amongst not only the Republicans, but the independents and the Democrats, they might have a strong advantage in a statewide campaign. So I think people recognize that. You know, I never thought at this age that I would be serving as county commissioner. My election in 2015 was considered one of the biggest upsets in Pennsylvania in the 2015 election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely garnered attention across the state. There were big state political figures that got involved, and there was a lot of hundreds of thousands of dollars that was spent in the campaign. And I had an independent grassroots campaign, and people counted me out. They didn't expect me to win, and I worked extremely hard.
Yep.
And we accomplished a huge victory. So I don't rule anything out. I think it's definitely a possibility. We've had county commissioners. The former chairman was recently elected attorney general. In the past, they ran for lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. They ran for Montgomery County commissioners that ran for governor and U.S. senator. Mm-hmm. So they definitely use it for a statewide springboard. And I think if I keep my name out in the public and I continue to do the job that I'm doing, which is putting people before politics,
yep,
and just use some common sense and moral character in every decision I make, you never know what happens in the future. I don't think we can rule anything out.
Sure. All right, let's take a break here, and I want to come back and then focus in on this article and a few other things on my mind here on the Financial Show of Record with Joe Gale. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I can make a difference in your super financial world. I'm George Toth, and with me, our guest is Joe Gale, Republican County Commissioner, talking about what's going on in the county and how it affects our lives right here, right now. I think a better title for your article, and I know you may not have written it, the title would be Don't Be Hoodwinked, because I think really much more the Democrats want to solve the problems with more debt. If there's a problem out there, let's throw some money at it. So I think a lot of Montgomery County individuals, male and female, have been hoodwinked and really have been more than fooled by what's going on. So tell us what's going on from your point of view.
So just to give you a little bit of the history, before I took office, I was elected in November of 2015. In December of 2015, the county commissioners at the time, the previous administration, voted on the 2016 budget. So they do that every year in December of the year before. So in December of 2015, the prior administration increased the county property tax by 9.87%. And it was a unanimous vote. All three commissioners voted in favor of the tax increase. So that alone, when you don't have anybody who's against it, it's quiet. It doesn't get much coverage in the press. Members of the public aren't aware because it's a unanimous 3-0 vote. So no one attended the public hearing on the budget.
Yeah.
Fast forward a year later, December of 2016, my first year in the budget process, I'm in office, and I vote strongly opposed to the next tax increase. So the residents of Montgomery County, the property owners, face back-to-back tax increase. They had the 9.87% in 2016, and this year they're hit with an 11% tax increase. And this tax increase that I oppose is a dedicated millage rate that goes straight to funding the Montgomery County Community College, which in the past was funded through the Montgomery County operating budget. So the county's operating budget, the commissioners used to allocate funding to the college. That burden from the financial standpoint is now pushed to the property owners. So the county's off the hook from funding the college, its operating budget, and now the residents are paying 11% tax to fund the college. So to me, I didn't think that was sustainable. And also the county is now losing oversight over the college and how they spend the money, because they can always piggyback on this dedicated millage rate that the residents will be paying year after year. So I was very outspoken against this, and it got attention. And as I explained in 2015 at the budget hearing, the public hearing, no one showed up. Not one person from the public showed up, to my knowledge. Then in 2016, because of my stance, it caught attention, and we had over 100 individuals show up to the public hearing. And remind you, this is in the afternoon, during the week, when most people are at work. I'd like to see them in the evening. But they're in the afternoon when most people can't attend the public hearing. So pretty much everyone who attended that was your regular property owner was opposed to this tax increase. They were very aggravated that they were facing back-to-back tax increases. And then on the other side, there were actually students and faculty and members of the union from the community college who were bused to the county administration building for the public hearing. And, of course, they were in favor of more funding for the college.
Of course.
So other than that, most people were opposed to this tax increase. The vast majority of people in Montgomery County, I'm out there all the time, they believe they're taxed enough already, and that government has to do something. We don't have a revenue problem in government. We have a spending problem. Revenues are at all-time high on all levels, and yet it's still never enough. So that basic common sense tells you that, okay, well, we have more revenue than we've ever had. We have to cut spending. We have to look at solutions to lower the costs of government. And that's something that I try to convey. And I offered simple alternatives.
And what were they, Joe? What were they, Joe?
Yeah, so just by holding the line on spending, not even making cuts, but holding the line on spending to most of the departments, not all, we could have saved over $7 million. And then I offered, I exposed some positions that I felt fall under the category of wasteful patronage positions. I think there's a lot of positions as far as employment in the county that if we eliminated, we could save hundreds of thousands of dollars that way. So, I didn't have the cooperation and the resources, being the minority commissioner, to balance the whole budget and create an alternative when I found out, a few weeks before the vote. But I definitely offered cuts that I think were common sense and should have been implemented before we go to the public for another money grab. Before you ever consider going back to the public for more money, these common sense solutions should be implemented. And unfortunately, my colleagues, they march to the Democratic drum of higher tax and spend agenda. And that's what we see here going on in Montgomery County.
Let me ask you a question just in terms of who were you mentioned lobbyists and special interests. We know that the special interest here would be the teachers. Any other special interests that you could identify, and any other lobbyists that had their nose in this situation?
No, as far as this budget, it was the big focus was on the community college.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the union members and their union reps from the college come. Other than that, that was the major focus because this dedicated millage rate was directly to the college. So you didn't see many other lobbyists.
Right. See, that really peeves me and makes me very upset and angry. Not that I'm against quote unquote community colleges or against education or anything like that, but the trend at colleges has been quite dismaying to me. And the trend, if it's anything like other parts of the country, the trends are quite left-leaning. And I don't have a problem with education as long as the education is not indoctrination. And I'm afraid that a lot of these students that are going there are being indoctrinated in a partial way. And if anyone thinks otherwise, I'd love to hear from them. I know that when I was in college, I remember distinctly being at a liberal college. There wasn't even a notion of objecting to what was being said there. Today, with all of the facts, the internet, and everything like that, you can pretty much not tear apart, but you can tear down presentations to their bare facts, and you begin to see what is being done in some of these universities, some of these colleges. And I don't want a broad brushstroke, and it may not be true at Montgomery County, but what I do know is that by and large, these teachers are not supporting a conservative agenda.
Oh, yeah, I think that's overall on a national level. We see that in the education system. And, and the Democrats, they do what they typically do. They act like, well, all this money is for the school, for the students, and it's going to help our young generation.
Yeah.
But in this case, in Montgomery County, I called it a trick budget because the so-called community college tax was taking an additional $22.3 million out of the pockets of county homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Democrats would say all that money's going to fund the college. But in reality,
yes, go ahead.
Less than 1/4 of that revenue generated from this tax is actually new additional funding for the community college. Because in previous budgets, funding for the community college was taken, as I said earlier, out of the county's operating budget. And last year, $18 million was allocated to the community college. So they act like all this is going to the college, but the county already was funding the college at $18 million in past previous years.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, this proposed tax removes the expense of the community college from the county operating budget, shifts that expense onto the taxpayers.
Right.
And meanwhile, the county spending increased by $18 million.
Right.
So when I started as commissioner, the county operating budget was $389 million. This year, we no longer have the college allocated in the budget, and the spending went up in the operating side to $409.
Wow.
So, that's alarming.
It is. Joe, hold that thought. I have one more question for you if you can stay just a few more minutes into the next segment here on the Financial Show of Record with Joe Gale and George Toth. Good morning and hello and welcome back to the Financial Show of Record here on Talk of the Suburbs, 1440 AM, WNPV1440.com. I'm George Toth, and with me is Commissioner Joe Gale from Montgomery County, the lone Republican. My question is this. We know the state is in deep debt. Now, we know the reason for that deep debt has to do with pensions. Is there any way to thread the needle on this, Joe, to find out where this money is going, in fact? Or is that just asking for too much?
Well, when you ask government, it always seems to be too much. You never get the easy answer. But, we're at record high debt. And I even saw that, the state, as far as the pension system, that's something the legislators in Harrisburg on the state level have to do. They have to move from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan, meaning similar to a 401k. Because that's what the private sector did. I think mostly every private sector company by the early 1990s was under a 401k system. And it's not sustainable to remain on the defined benefit plan, and especially for new hires, people that are not vested into it. That's the time to make the switch.
Yeah.
But we don't see that happening at the state level.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable.
Yeah, so it's going to be very hard to find out whether this money is going to build the new wing out at Montgomery County College or just exactly where, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay. Joe, thank you very much for your time. Would you be willing to take a call?
Sure, and if I could just touch
Sure.
on the letter again.
Yes.
The tax bill letter, for the listeners that are that received their tax bill letter and you live in Montgomery County, it came out on the official county stationery with the formal letterhead at the top that has the three commissioners' names, and it explains to you that there's a new dedicated millage rate to fund the college, and it brags about how wonderful this new tax increase is.
Mm-hmm.
And then this formal letter is unsigned.
Mm-hmm.
No one signed the letter. And I think that's very insulting to hear you're raising the taxes twice in a row on the residents, and you don't even have the courage to sign the letter. And I think you can't help but assume that it was a deliberate attempt to fool the residents and make them think that all three commissioners voted for it. Mm-hmm. But in reality, I was strongly opposed.
Okay.
So that was the big controversy over the unsigned tax bill letter.
All right, let's bring the caller in. Good morning and welcome to the Financial Show of Record. And do you have a question for us?
Yes, I do, George. Thanks for taking my call. And Joe, this is Don calling from over in Franconia. I was very fortunate to be able to work in your campaign when you got elected to be commissioner, and it's been my pleasure ever since to see that you got that job. And my question, it's my pleasure again. My question is, early on, or maybe even before you took office, didn't the county pull some shenanigans with, I think it was called the Johnson House, but I could be wrong with that name. It was like a nursing home that was owned by the county, and they sold it off, I think.
Yes, you're referring to Park House, and you're right. You're right. It was a geriatric center for senior citizens. That happened before I took office a couple years ago, but that was a county-owned and operated geriatric center in Upper Providence Township. And when the Democrat administration came in, they sold that geriatric center to a private company called Mid-Atlantic Healthcare. And so the county no longer had that burden on its operating budget. So really it was a short-term fix. They sold off the county asset to avoid raising taxes for that immediate year for political expedience, so they could parade around bragging about how they aren't raising taxes. Then later on we got hit. But what really angered me about that was I dug deeper to find out why exactly it was handled that way with the sale of Park House. The owner of Mid-Atlantic, who bought Park House, made contributions of $26,000 to former Montgomery County Commissioner Josh Shapiro's campaign account. So here we are. We sold this for millions of dollars, and then here the company is giving them campaign contributions. So I think that's unethical and uncalled for, and ultimately the county residents suffered from it.
Yeah.
Very unethical, and thanks for your explanation on that. I think that has to get out over the airs and out to the public, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much for calling, Don. Well, Joe, thank you for hanging out with us for these few minutes, and we'll be watching what goes on in the county commissioner chairs and the situation there like a hawk. Thank you. Godspeed, and we'll be talking to you again, Joe.
I appreciate it, and any listeners that would like to check out my website, it's joegale.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Be well.